Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review we are looking at the Transformers Dark of the Moon Human Alliance SOUNDWAVE. Now this figure is really hard to come by if you buy the legitimate version. This particular figure is the KO version, which means knockoff, which means it's not legit. And the reason I have it is because of what, like I just said, Hasbro made it virtually impossible to find this figure in the US and still really hard elsewhere. So this was the only option, and I still had trouble getting this. Luckily, a viewer sent this to me, so thanks to him for that. He actually sent it to me to keep, so that's really awesome. Now, the good thing to note about this guy is that the KO version, aside from a couple of loose joints, basically identical to the original. So if you had trouble tracking one down and you're able to track down a knockoff one, I suggest you get it, if you can get it for a good price. Normally I wouldn't recommend knockoffs, but when a company makes it hard to buy what you want to buy, since that is the business they're in, is selling you stuff, then I think it's only right that you get it elsewhere. So that's why we have this. It's a very nicely done knockoff. You can see all of the details are very well executed. The paint scheme, nice and clean. Some people have talked about having extra flashing on the molds, which is when you have the extra plastic on there around the edges. Other than little bits like right there, you can see that kind of white spot. I didn't notice any, and you notice that kind of stuff on the legit figures anyway, so I think that's okay. Again, the only real issue is you get some looseness in a couple of the joints. If they are the type of joints that have screws in them, you can tighten it, and that's not a problem at all. But if they're the type of joints that have pins in it, of course, you're a little bit limited there. But still, if you have to spend $40 on a knockoff or $200 on the legit one, you know, it's close enough that I would say go ahead and grab the knockoff. So anyway, he stands just about 7 inches tall, which makes him just about, I don't know, around 17.5 centimeters. He's a really cool looking Transformer. Unfortunately, he's really top heavy. I don't remember in the movie him being quite so bulky up top and so skinny in the legs. So that's a bit of a problem. It makes it difficult for him to stand, despite the fact that, or even if he had tighter joints, it would still be a little problematic. You can see he's got a pretty good sized backpack. Everything is up there. If it wasn't for this part of the car part, like the door hole thing there, it wouldn't be that bad of a backpack, but with the doors that do have to stick around somewhere, it makes him pretty bulky up top. So balancing is an issue, but for the most part, it's a generally appealing figure from the front, so that's a good thing. The head does swivel, and you can lift the head up to open the mouth, so that's pretty cool. The shoulders are kind of a pain in the butt. You can see inside right there, the joint, and then there's another one over here. So you get some range of motion, but with all the kibble, it really gets in the way. So it's going to be pretty difficult to pose him. You do get a bicep swivel for the lower arm, or bicep, and then a bicep swivel for the lower arm, so that's good. And then, of course, the thumb and the hand is all hinged, or at least these fingers. This part moves a little bit, but not so much. So you get a little bit of poseability there, nothing in the torso. And then the hips and the legs, there's articulation all over the place down here just because it's necessary for the transformation. So you can move the legs in and out like a standard hip joint, but then as far as knees go, you get the main joint there, but it's basically not useful because you can't really pose them at all. And then you get all kinds of other joints in there, in there, in there, in there, and in there. So it's not, again, very useful. And then, of course, the toes are all articulated, or feet parts. But again, that's just for the transformation, not actually useful. So in terms of robot mode poseability, not much. You're going to have him standing there fairly static, and he'll look good doing it, but that's about it. One thing to note is that he comes with Laserbeak, which is, again, basically the exact same as the official release. It does have a transformation that you can peg into his torso. You're supposed to peg it in here. It doesn't fit that well though, so don't expect that to go so well. But you can peg it in there and it turns into this weird kind of cockpit thing for Gould, which it comes with. It's just weird, so I didn't do it, and I don't think anybody else would actually do that either. So I would just leave Laserbeak as Laserbeak. Why tarnish the name in that weird transformation? But that transformation does include this pop-out cannon that fires a weapon, which is spring-loaded, which you guys are all familiar with if you're familiar with Transformers. It's not really anything new. So there's that. That's robot mode. It's not particularly impressive, but it's the one that I needed in my collection, and it's not bad. It's a pretty cool Transformer. fairly accurate. If it wasn't for being top heavy and having those loose joints, it's pretty solid. So I'm going to say I recommend it if you can get it for the right price. I wouldn't spend 200 bucks on it. So let me get him transformed and you can see the alt mode or the vehicle mode. Okay, so we have him transformed into the alt mode, which is basically identical to the official release. Being the knockoff, it really doesn't affect the figure other than a few loose pins or screws. It really looks just as good as any of my other Human Alliance figures, so I really wouldn't have any reservations if I was you in picking it up. You can see we have all of the detail in the license plate. The tail lights are painted, and if we spin it around, you can see the front grille is painted. The wheels, I mean, everything is the way it's supposed to be. It doesn't look like a knockoff in any way. The mold flashing that you find here and there, it's almost non-existent, at least on the one I have, so I really wouldn't worry about it. And you can see some of the panels aren't perfectly tight. They have been. This particular one has been tight. It's just a pain in the ass to get all of these panels, especially in the quarter panel region. It's there's a lot of little bits in there that move around a lot of different ways and have to go together just right. So you can do it. It just takes a lot of finagling. So I really wouldn't worry about it. It looks good. It's a solid transformation. It's not too complicated once you get the feel for it. So I would recommend it. I think it's a solid figure, and like I said in the other part, if you can get it for the right price, I think you should probably do that, because it's a nice addition to the Human Alliance collection, which I think is the best batch of figures coming out of the movies. The Human Alliance figures were just great, and this is it's pretty good to add this one to the collection. So there you go, guys. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can see my upcoming figure reviews, custom figures, and other good stuff. And in the meantime, keep collecting.